Uh, you may have noticed right away that Joe is not here today. He is again out in Ibiza, Spain, doing a training. He will be back next week, I hope. I can't guarantee that. Some of our clients love having Joe teach classes, so they might pull him back over there. Today's show, though, is going to be about the API court case between Google and Oracle, and I have Ania here today. She has her own channel, and the name is escaping me. Ania, what is the channel's name? It's coding code
It's
with Ania.
coding with my name. Yeah, coding with Ania Kubow. Thanks so much for introducing me. Yes, I do have my own YouTube channel. It's mainly about creating games in JavaScript, so learning how to code through creating games such as Tetris, Snake, Space Invaders, and so
Whack-a-mole. I
on.
remember whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole, there's whack-a-mole too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so you guys can come and learn how to do Excel here. And then if you want to learn how to code, you can go to Anya's channel over there. And we'll put a link in the description. I think it should already be there. So everyone watching, go to Anya's channel, like and subscribe, and check it out there. And then just a few notes for our channel. I've said that we would start releasing stuff daily. That is definitely going to be happening in May. We have people recording all the videos right now. So everything will be coming out in May. Starting in May, and it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We'll have content. Either it'll be the new Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday will be the software training videos. Thursday, as always, will be Excel Today, and then Friday will be the offsite event that we do live weekly as well. And so those are the updates for the channel. So without further, is there anything else I was gonna say? No. So without further ado, I'll jump right into this court case. And so I know everyone, you might have seen like just blurbs of everything like that, that Oracle and Google just had a huge court case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was over APIs. And you might have not known what APIs are, or how they may affect you or anything like that. And so that's why I asked Ania to come here. She obviously works in JavaScript, coding in Java and everything like that. So she's the expert. So I just want to maybe ask her, Ania, can you explain to our audience exactly what APIs are?
Yeah, definitely. So first off, technically, APIs stand for application programming interfaces. But I think I always find it easiest to explain what an API is by what it does. So a lot of companies will either produce or use APIs, and it's a way for them to, whilst building their software, inject data. So that is the main use for APIs. I would say, think of a weather app. You can literally get the data for that weather app using an API. Google Maps has an API, which is super popular. You would have definitely used it in a few of your applications that you use today. And the company will then, so for example, Google, which is probably a good company to talk about, as we're going to be talking about them today. Google will, for example, provide you with that data, update that data, and by having this API, you have access to that data. Banking, open banking, for example. I know banks, these huge monoliths are also moving more towards having APIs where anyone, such as me or you, can have access to your own data and build your own app using it. So it's really cool. It really is the future. And yeah, it's a hot topic at the moment and has been for a while.
Yeah, and I can just speak from experience using APIs that we were moving to a new training management system, and to make that system talk to our website, we've had to build a bunch of or use a bunch of APIs to have that data go back and forth, and even customize the API to where it fills out certain forms and fields and stuff like that to kind of fill in that glue right there. So just
Cool.
going to go over the case real quick, just a quick pointers, because again, I'm sure everyone saw blurbs, but the crux of the case kind of comes down to the first court case. It kind of set the whole table for this, and that is that Sun Microsystems started Java. It must have been in the 90s, 1990, I think, and then they made it open in 1995. And it's basically a programming language that helps you do a lot of shortcuts using their APIs. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes,
Yes, their
exactly.
whole mentality is right. Was it write once, execute forever, or something like that? I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it's something along those lines, to where it created a shortcut for programmers to code a lot more stuff a lot quickly. And
Yeah.
their first court case started well, it didn't start until 2010. The court case didn't start until Oracle purchased Sun, and laid claim to the patents and the APIs. And just kind of like how they got there was Google was developing Android. And when they were developing Android, they wanted it to be more open to developers. So they tried to work with Sun first. And they said, like, hey, can we license these Java APIs with you guys? And they were trying to work out a deal. And for whatever reason, it kind of fell apart. Google says it was because Java wanted to have more control on the stuff that was made out, the developers made, and lay claim to those. But it fell apart. But Google did kind of an end around. They went to this company called Apache, and they got a clean room environment. And Anya, could you explain what a clean room environment is? Because I saw that and I have a general idea, but I'm not too sure about that.
I'd actually, I'm not entirely sure myself. Let's just
Oh,
have a
okay.
little Google. Clean room environment.
Yeah,
It's not something
it's
that I've come across.
I think from how I was reading it was that they gave basically like a blank slate in the Java environment for
Mm.
Google to develop. That's what I'm guessing. It's pure speculation. But that clean room, Google took 37 APIs and 11,500 lines of code. And as far as coding goes on, is that a lot of code or?
It's 11. It's not actually the hugest amount of code, I would say. And I mean, the whole case is interesting for a lot of reasons. I don't think it's the amount of code that you use, but it's what that code does, which is why this case is even more interesting. Was that code open source? What was the deal with it? So yeah, not a lot of code, but could have been obviously, and is very useful.
And then so they took those 37 APIs, that 11,500 lines of code, and they developed uh, Android, the Android system that we all use and love today. Like I use on my OnePlus. Shout out to OnePlus. I love you guys' phone.
Mhm.
But they used that to develop Android, and they came to Sun, and Sun kind of knew that they had taken the code, and as their CEO said, he kind of just grit his teeth because it was the better for the coding community as a whole. What they had done. Oracle, though, purchased Sun in 2010 and almost immediately sued Google over its use of these 37 APIs. And from there, the case kind of goes back and forth between, what is an API copyrightable? Was what Google did fair use? And that's kind of like the crux of it. And what fair use is that, like if someone writes a book, and you write a book, because you use like paragraphs and sentences and all that type of stuff, it doesn't mean that that person has like a copyright to the grammar of the book. And so that's kind of what the fair use thing is falling into. And that's kind of what the court case kind of devolved into um, was the SSO. And I can't explain this at all. Like I looked at it, structure, organization, or structure. I don't even know what the SSO stands for. Could you like explain how that works in coding and everything?
Well, yeah, I think let me just tell you from like a coding perspective. I think this is a big topic. I mean, these are two major companies fighting over this, but this stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
Code, obviously, no one can. Code is very much like grammar. You can't own it. But however, when it's put together in certain ways, then obviously it does becomes someone's put that together. But does it become their property? Like, who knows? Especially in this world of open source. And a lot of APIs today are open source. A lot of code out there is open source. So at what point, like, at what point does something become open source? Because I think this was slightly open source, meaning that anyone can contribute to it. At what point does someone say like, oh no, you can't use that to make millions and millions of pounds. Now I want that. Now I want to own it. So there's a lot of gray, and there has been, I mean, you can put licenses on any of your repositories, but if someone comes along and changes it by just a few lines of code, then does that make that yours anymore? Sort of like copyrights and patents, but obviously we are now dealing with it in the technical space too. So yeah, that's sort of my perspective from it as a developer. I guess also like I create lots of games online, so I know how it feels for someone to take your code and then change it a little bit and be like, "Oh, look what I made." I'm like, "Hang on, I
I can
made
definitely, I
that."
definitely agree with you because it also happens. We kind of had that happen to us as a company as a whole. There was a brand new company that started, and they did copy a lot of what we did, like
Yeah.
some of it word for word, but a lot of it was the style and stuff like that in the presentation that we do. And so, like, I definitely agree with you. Like, where is that line?
Where is that line exactly?
Yeah, and so that's what the court case was really trying to determine. And then, like, I was like reading, just reading up on it real quick before the show, And just I was kind of reading like like how could the jury determine that? And that actually became a part of it, is that it was such a complex uh, topic that the court actually disregarded what the jury was when decided if a regular jury could decide this type of case. And it did go
Mhm.
back and forth. Oracle won some, Google won some, but eventually Oracle had won out on its claims of API being copyrightable, and that the fair use that Google did not have fair use of what it was doing. And then it got escalated to the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court it became a huge battle between not just uh, or Google and Oracle, but a lot of the tech companies started siding up on like where they stood. And I think the most surprising thing was that Microsoft became one of the main defenders of Google, and is their lawyers claim on the Seventh Amendment use of fair use and everything like that, that their argument was the most persuasive, and persuading the justices to vote for Google um, prevailing, so to speak. Um,
Mm.
but there's the two camps, right? There's just to play devil's advocate a bit with a lot of this stuff is, what camp do you fall into? Because I mean, Anya already alluded to it. Is like if you were just starting out and you made a code system, but it and you patent it, you have a copyright to it and everything like that, but someone just takes a little bit of it and then creates something new with that, or but it's never been created before. Where does that where what is the fair use of that? And
Yeah.
so,
I
um,
think,
yeah,
yeah.
where do you fall on that,
Sorry.
Anya? What camp do you
Well,
fall
so yes, I mean, when I first read it, I was like, oh my god, how could people? I imagine myself on the jury, and I would be like, no, obviously Google's in the wrong. 11,000 lines of code is not a lot, but it's a lot if you copy them exactly as they are, and that's what they did.
yeah.
So I was like, how can anyone ever award, like Google the? How can Google ever win this case? But then obviously they had some powerful lawyers, and some of the stuff they said did make sense, especially the one where saying that the code cannot be used will be, what did they say, like a harm to the public's interest, because it would be squashing innovation. It would be saying you can't use this, and it would be hindering development. So then I was just like, oh, okay, well, that makes a good point. But it is a bit like, I'm not saying Oracle is the little man at all, but in this situation, it's the little man, I guess. So I was very torn. To like even now, I wouldn't even know as a jury member who to pick. I guess swaying maybe towards the Oracle should be right side. How about you?
I'm the same way, like, because this does go beyond just API coding and stuff like that. It is really determining, like the music industry. I think is I mentioned this before we came on the show. Is that's kind of like where I see it, is that the music industry, the copyright law for the music industry is really broken. And what like if you use like two chords of a song, they can lay claim to whatever works that you did in it as a whole. And so like I see that as kind of being broken. I mean, just being on YouTube and everything like that, like I have to purchase, music directly from the artist, which is fine. I have no problem doing that. But like, if I wanted to use something that was popular or anything like that, like even if I played like, I think it's like four notes or something like that, that they can lay claim to all the revenue you produce and everything like that.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
God, I didn't
that's why
know that.
that's why the copyright algorithm on YouTube is so you get those strikes, but they kind of have a deal worked out, like like you can't make this one monetized, or like that's only happened to me once, and you only get three.
Hmm.
They weren't It wasn't an official strike, but there was just a warning. But
Yeah.
like that really does affect you, like especially anyone else out there. You have to use that YouTube friendly music, or like there's a lot of music that you can use that doesn't have free use, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I see that as kind of being a little bit broken. And like, like how long do you get to lay claim to, that original work or that patented work? And
Hmm.
so I really was siding with Google initially, because I was like, yeah, like to have more innovation and all this other type of stuff. But when you read more into the case, they're like a lot of the stuff that they copied, they said that they could have just wrote themselves. So, like, and just if they just took the time, and like you said, it was a very small part of the overall, amount of coding that they did. It must be in the billions of lines of codes to build an Android operating system. Uh, and so to take 11,500 and say that, like and just copy it when you could have written that yourself. Like I get it. It seems like, well, you guys wouldn't have been in this whole issue if it wasn't somebody just doing a copy paste job. That's where it can
I'm
hurt.
surprised they did a copy paste job. Like, not even try to disguise it, like moving some
Well, I
stuff
mean, like I
around.
understand what they did, right? Like you took it through another party, right? And you're saying that you're getting the license from them because they license it
Yeah,
through directly. Like I understand the middleman part of that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
definitely was initially siding with Google because innovation and all that type of stuff. Those arguments are really strong. But when you look at the copyright claim and how you can create these things now, and especially as a coder, like when you create, you are literally creating something right there with your language and like that. And if you created like a new language or something like that, or a new way to connect to do that interoperability or whatever it is, I know I'm saying that word terribly, but it just means that all devices can work together with the same software. um, so you know
You'd
to,
be, yeah.
if you created a new thing like that, if there was a larger company that could do it better than you, then you lose all control of that. And
If,
that's
yeah,
that's
there's
that's I
one
think
thing
that's a really
about,
dangerous way to go.
yeah, there's one thing about sharing your code and, it being a community thing, open source, everyone contributing. And there's another thing when someone like Google steals it line for line and makes billions off it. That doesn't sit well.
Yeah, it doesn't sit well with me either. It is much more into the economy and how patents and copyrights work more in China. It's not it's not who created it. It's who uses it the best, I guess, in the marketplace, or who delivers it best to
Mm,
the customers. And then that
yes.
idea also makes me think, well, maybe Google's right on that one. You know what I mean? Because it is what's going to be delivered to the customer. And so I think it really just comes down to who do you think is really going to lose out more from this? And
Mm,
uh, I don't like how the music stuff works because there's a lot of people out there, are as they call them, patent trolls and stuff like that, that go around and trying to get your get to lay claim to everything you do and everything like that. And I mean, there was even an episode of Silicon Valley where they covered that. Like the guy was a music
yes.
guy and he owned like X amount of lines and he was trying to sue Pied Piper for that. So
Yes, I
it does
remember
exist
that.
and it does permeate throughout all their industries. So I'm still undecided. Like honestly, like I can't make a decision on where I fall on this because I see both sides. I can see both sides, and the fair use for even they're saying that, well, it's such a small percentage and everything like that. It's still you're still taking away from the creator. The creator should be able to to profit off of that. To earn money or get their kudos or get their their
Yeah,
right.
exactly. I think, yeah, I'm surprised the Supreme Court jury voted the way they did. I wonder if it was a case of maybe misunderstanding how much work goes into these 11,000 lines of code. It's not just like writing an essay, it's completely different. There's a lot of thought that goes into it and stuff. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I wonder what this means for the future. I wonder if this is going to mean that, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know much about copyrights in tech, as much as I probably should, because I create games that people use and create for themselves. But it is like you would feel slighted. So I think there has to be something done from something like this happening again, a major company swooping in. And I imagine if it was a smaller, not Oracle, but a much smaller company, like say a startup of 3 people who came up and thought of this amazing technology, and then somehow that got either, like it wasn't open source. I keep saying open source. Open source, by the way, for everyone is as a developer, you store our code on GitHub, and that could either be public or private. For example, all my tutorials, all the code for them is public, but I do have a license saying, like, could you please, like, just use this for personal projects? Okay, that's what my license say. That prevents or should prevent someone from taking that and making loads and loads of money off it, because I don't think that's very fair. So that's like a standard license that I will put on my repos. There's also open source, which is a project sort of like, I guess, the programming language React, that's open source. Anyone can contribute to it. And it has a governing body that, approves the changes that people contribute or not. So that is open source, just by the way, for those of you who perhaps I rambled a bit, but that is open source
No, you
for those
explained it
of you
perfectly.
wondering.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I didn't. I again, I have a layman's perspective of this. I grew up around it, but I know the terms to a small degree. But again, if you ask me to explain them fully, I could never explain it like you just did.
So yeah,
um,
I hope this doesn't take a negative turn towards like a startup going open source and hoping people contribute and really grow this community with their product to being like, no, we're not going to share it, because then that doesn't improve their product either, you know? And then them just being scared that some major player will come along and take their code and they don't have the money to sue them. They don't have the money to do anything. It's just a bit sad, really. Which is why I think I sort of sided with Oracle from the first go.
Yeah, yeah, and that again, like I was full innovation, but I really that's what I really feel is going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of smaller companies that maybe sell before they wanted to or something like that because someone's going to come and just basically tell them like, hey, like either you sell to us or we're just going to copy your code. It's almost exactly like Silicon Valley in my mind, like when Pied Piper is gets off its feet and then I can't remember the name of their
Yeah, yeah,
flag.
yeah. It was something, it was like the pied, I
Hooli,
don't know,
Hooli,
fox.
that's what it was, Hooli.
Yes. Oh, I do remember that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reverse engineers it to a degree, and they probably made enough changes to where they could, have a copyright to it or something like that. And even that show got into like this court case and what was the crux of it, like who owns the code, and what is your claim to it, being open source or not, and stuff like that, and how far it goes.
Hmm.
So we got a couple comments. Oh, my favorite viewer, Fiber Optic, he always has some great comments and everything like that. Fiber optic. Oh, and this is going to the music issue. My experience that misuse is YouTube will either mute the sound having the portion of the copyrighted material or they will take the video down completely, but seldom ever issue a strike versus you. Yes, I definitely agree with you, fiber optic. But it does create an environment to where you don't even want to risk it. You know, we do have a couple videos where the intro, where instructor might have been playing music to kind of do an intro, and they did just mute it. But that also it just makes it to where we never want to use music like other like popular music, I guess the best way to put it, because I would love to have more current music, but I also have the person I purchase music from as a friend of mine, so I don't have any issue purchasing music from him, so I get to support him at the same time. But it, it, I can see other channels having bigger issues and stuff like that when it comes to music use and stuff like that. Anya, as far as music goes, I know it's not like a huge part of coding, but do you have like the tracks and stuff like that you play in the background and everything like that?
Well, when I started my channel, this was before I was monetized, so maybe I didn't think it mattered that much. I had the what was it, Pac-Man intro into some of my, but only like maybe 5 seconds worth of it. But obviously now I'm just like, oh no. I mean, I was still mute it, right? It's
Yeah.
fine. Hopefully they didn't take it down.
Yeah, no. When I first got that first notice, I was so worried. I was like, "Oh no, what did we do?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
like anyone who tries to do stuff on our channel or is working with me on the channel, they know I harp that so strong. Like, don't use music. Like, if you do, I have music. I have that. We own the copyrights to it. So like,
Yeah. Oh, that's
let's use this
good.
stuff. Let me see. And then fiber optic did follow up again. Oh, he does believe that Google had the correct and stronger position on the matter. And when
Interesting.
reading the ruling of the court case and how many lines of code that is in the totality of the Android system, I can really see that side of it. I really can, because they said that it, and to your point, Anya, you were talking about how the Supreme Court know how much work went into that code. They might have known not long, knew how long that took to write that code in 1990. 11,500
Mm,
lines. I know in today's environments that's still a small amount, and for the totality of the Android operating system it was 0.4% of the code
mm,
and
yeah.
APIs that they use in the total system. So it was a very small amount, and a microcosm of coding that built out that whole system. But if they didn't have that, could they have built it out that much to work with developers and stuff like that? And so that's where I kind of that's why I'm always kind of going back and forth with it, because when it was first announced, when I first heard it, I was like, oh great, Google won, like most coders will be able to freely code. And I think Oracle, I think where they kind of lost it is that they really harped on controlling the structure and the grammar of how you code. Like
Mm,
using the headers and all this other type of stuff on how you start coding. Um, and they wanted to own
yeah.
that part, and everything in between, was born from their headers is kind of like what the angle they took. And so I feel like if they more or less argued it from, like, it-
It's a yeah, it's
yeah,
a difficult
it's just
one.
not,
It's impossible to choose.
yeah, it is. It's and again, it's not a clear cut case to me because like I keep saying it over and over again, but I really feel like the smaller companies are gonna be the ones that get hit hardest by this because who's to stop Google from doing fair use on anyone else? Like they wouldn't even have to maybe buy the companies; they could just use fair use on it. And
Yeah,
so,
well, that's a danger, right? And
yeah,
I just hope that's being taken seriously for the sake of smaller startups.
yeah. Yeah, me too as well. And so, well, that's kind of where I stand in the case. Undecided. I see both
Me
sides.
too.
I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to be like neutral because, like we have a big audience or something like that, or I don't want to piss anyone off, but I can really just see both sides about how one side or the other can be hurt by this decision. I definitely see the industry as a whole sees it as a win, and like I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, I feel like we should caution against what maybe try to define fair use further and stuff like that, so we don't have these abuses by larger companies on smaller companies, because I could definitely see that happening. And I don't want to talk about China's economy again, but it's something I've read quite a few books on how their economy works out there, and that's kind of like how things go out there. And people are always saying, well, they don't respect IP and all this other type of stuff. It's just a different mindset of running your, how you run your economy or how you let companies run. There can be all this innovation, but anyone can use it, and whatever company that delivers it best to your customers, that's who deserves to, be the front runner or whatever. I kind of get that, but at the same time, when you have super big corporations and maybe like a small company creating that, they don't have a fair fight in there. And, I just feel like it should be a more level playing field. And I think it needs to be something that needs to be um, talked about further, or, like that fair use really needs to be explained out better when it comes to programming. Well, we're just about at the end of the show here. We just have a couple minutes. Oh, I totally forgot. Joe's not here to remind me. He always reminds me about the mugs. But today I just have a really plain mug, nothing special. I do want to make sure I get that bit in. That's definitely a Joe special. Um, and I really want to thank Anya for coming on here and explaining these parts, and bringing the coder. Oh, you got a great gray mug
I've
there.
got another mug. I've got a blue mug.
Yeah. I really want to thank you for coming on to explain these more technical sides of coding and stuff like that, because I know like this case probably went over a lot of people's head, but it does have a huge ramifications for technology, and that's going to have huge ramifications for how you work, and what you're doing in the office, and even the tools you use. All those tools you use, like anyone who uses Teams, Zoom, and all that stuff uses APIs to integrate that technology. And so, depending on what side won, we could have seen major changes. Google won, so we're probably going to see things continue as they are. Just because that's just kind of like how it's been anyways. But if Oracle had won, we might have seen, people said we might have seen a narrowing of innovation, and maybe like one company controls all code and stuff like that. So um, again, I don't want to choose sides or anything like that, but uh, it's something that has reverberating effects through every single person who works in an office. And again, thank you, Anya. Go to her channel, guys. Like and subscribe if you want to learn how to code. I can definitely tell you, I watched that how to code 7 games with JavaScript, and I was learning right away. I don't really know how to code at all, but it's a great start. It is, and all of her videos are great. She has a ton of guests. I like your rapid fire question video series that you have. So go check out her channel, like and subscribe, and the link to her channel is going to be in the video description as well. And that is it for today's show. Next week, we will be trying to do the Excel VBA again. I know last week's show we had a technical issue where it stopped about 12 minutes in and we restarted, but we've invited Chelsea back to take your guys' Excel VBA questions. So next week is Excel VBA. And then on Friday, we're doing our Smartsheet certified video. So Joe Patty is a certified Smartsheet instructor, and he'll be doing a certified Smartsheet training for everybody. It's going to be our regular recording schedule. I know we haven't had one of those this month, and we're trying to get more of those going again. And again, I promise you guys, in May, we will start releasing videos daily. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you will see new training videos, our bread and butter. We're committed 100% to bringing out 3 recorded shows and 2 live shows each week to you guys starting in May. So you'll be seeing a ton more content from us. And again, I want to thank everyone for watching. And again, like and subscribe here as well, and to Ania's as well. And everyone have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.